All right, here we go with the Morning Sports Desk, Monday, May 20th. I'm Corey. That's Zeke. Hi, Zeke. Game 7 victors. Holy buckets. How does it feel?
I don't know how to feel. I woke up this morning and I thought it was a dream. I woke up and I was prepping myself for Game 7, and it had already happened. And what a I don't have words.
I feel the same way.
I don't have words. I've been trying to prep how I'm going to talk about this all day, and my emotions don't know what to do right now. Because you look at that game, Wolves are down 20, 58-38, and you figure, all right, here we go, and not get expectations going, and then they go on that run and just put the defensive clamps on the defending champs, and here we go, Western Conference Finals against Dallas.
It was a crazy game, kind of a microcosm of that whole series, right? Like each game leading up to Game 7 was just kind of a old school thumping. Outside, I guess Game 1 was a little closer than the rest of them, but each half had its very similar vibes to, I guess, the rest of that series, where it was just all Denver in that first half, and the Timberwolves. The margin in the second half was greater than the margin in the first half, if that makes sense, right? It was halftime score was 52-38,
something like that. Yeah, 15 points at half. Yeah,
and the second half was, I think, 60-32 in favor of the Wolves. I mean, just an absolute stunner that they out-executed the defending champs and the MVP on their floor. I can't believe it.
Yeah, going back and rewatching some of what happened last night is, I think they talk about the dreaded 2-goal lead in hockey, and I think for Denver last night it was the dreaded 20-point lead, and just the way they weren't able to rest Nikola Jokic. You're up by 20 points, and you can't pull your best player off the floor because you don't have confidence that the other 14 guys on that team can get it done. And Joker looked gassed at the end of it. The one play that was the turning point for me, it was the Rudy Gobert turnaround 15-foot jumper as the shot clock expired, gave the Wolves a 4-point lead, still 7.5 minutes to go, so still a lot of time, but just the physical reaction of Nikola Jokic when Rudy hit that jumper, you could tell he was gassed, and they would not have enough to finish this game out.
I think I put my head through the ceiling when he hit that. I mean, because that guy just is not supposed to make that shot on any planet in any alternate universe, including this. I mean, that was insane that went through. As a matter of fact, did you hear the Ant quote after the game?
I haven't yet.
He said
there's a lot of good ones.
He said when Rudy made that one, he's like, I think we pretty much got him.
Yeah. When the basketball gods took that ball and dropped it gently through the net, it was over. You just had this feeling like watching this Wolves team for the last 20 years. And Kat talked about it last night. I mean, we've lost for 20 years. What do you expect us to do at this point?
Yeah.
And just having this feeling of, okay, it's a 4-point lead in a huge game with 7 minutes left. Something catastrophic is going to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't. I mean, Naz Reid woke up, had some huge plays, had the big putback dunk on the Cat missed 3, had a huge assist right after that to hit Cat for that wide open 3 that was kind of the proverbial dagger, if you will. I mean, Jaden McDaniels, kind of an unsung hero unless you're looking at the deep analytics, but just the way defensively, a quiet 26 points or something like that last night, 23, 26 points. I don't even remember because he was tied with Cat for the most points in the game.
Yeah.
But just the impact that he had on the floor, and Mike Conley can't express the Mike Conley factor in this as well. He missed games. Was it 3 and 4? Or was it just 4 that he missed?
Just the one game is all
just 4 with the Achilles, and you're like, okay, the Wolves look awful. That was the really bad one. Conley comes back. The Wolves win by 45. I don't think that's a coincidence there. And then last night, too, field general and just Minnesota Mike laying it all out there, and just easily the best win in the franchise history. Last night.
And I feel the same. I feel the same way as you, just because of the immediacy of it, but I keep finding myself like, oh man, but Rudy's never great offensively, but what he had to do when he had to do, I mean, he made free throws all game long, and we've seen that shooting stroke from the free throw line. It's not
something like
the
that.
prettiest looking thing. Carl defensively all series long on Joker is incredible.
Yep.
He had his most poised, composed, whatever synonym you want to throw in here, game of his entire career.
He's grown up
in a time and in a game when he historically, notoriously, traditionally gets weird. He was not weird in this game at all. I thought he had a great game. And then when Rudy fouls out, Naz comes in. This team and this composition of this team was built literally to beat Denver in this exact scenario. Like, this is why you have three bigs and these guys who do what they do.
Yeah, and Jokic still dropped 36 and 17 or something like that. But
he's incredible.
The big thing for Denver is just no help, and we've seen that here in Minnesota for many years. You look back at the Kevin Garnett years; he won his MVP, but just had very little help outside of depth. And for a long time, the standard has been for Wolves fans that 03-04 squad with the MVP in Garnett. You've got Sam Cassell and Latrell Sprewell joining him. Zerbiak was an all-star, but after that, I mean, you've got Michael Olowokandi, and you've got Oliver Miller, and you've got Mark Madsen, and those types of players. But you look at this Wolves top 8, and you've got the sixth man in Naz Reid, and you've got Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who struggled last night, but that was okay because other guys picked up. And of course, you've got Ant and Cat and Gobert and McDaniels and just Minnesota Mike Conley, and just a complete team versus a big three. I think it was Anthony Edwards who said, we don't have a big 3, we have a big 15. And that's what's scary about this Wolves team over these next two series potentially, especially in this big matchup against Dallas, which I think Wolves in 5. I don't think Dallas matches up against the Wolves at all.
No, I think it's a really nice matchup, and I'm going to continue to celebrate this Timberwolves win probably for another 24 to 48 hours. I told someone else this morning I don't play for the Timberwolves, so I don't need to be down to business. I can wait until about tip off of that Mavs game before I take it seriously. But you brought up the 03-04 Wolves team. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a good opportunity, Zeke, to transition into a little game to play here today on the Morning Sports Desk.
Okay.
There are teams throughout Minnesota sports history that almost got it done. And by that, I mean making it to the semifinals, to use the big, broad term, a conference semifinals, whatever it might be, a championship series. Okay, so let's go through this. We're going to exclude. We're gonna go post 1991 World Series Minnesota Twins.
Okay, the last time we had the four majors for.
Yep, yes, okay. Because of course they got it done.
Yep.
We're also going to exclude, with no disrespect mentioned, for the Minnesota Lynx, who obviously were dynastic, and all of those players are in or going into the Hall of Fame in the very immediate future, and how awesome they were. Okay.
Yep.
Let's run. So we're going to run through these chronologically. I'll throw them out at you, and I want you to rank them. These teams that almost got it done, rank them in order of who was the best of those teams. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's start with, we'll actually go back to that 91 year. So we're going to overlap a little bit with the Twins and the 1991 North Stars.
Okay.
Who lost in the Stanley Cup final to the Pittsburgh Penguins in 6. On this ranking of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams, 8 teams, where would you put them?
Okay, I'm going to make my list here. So we have 8 spots.
8 spots.
Okay. I did some research this morning. I found this book in my car called Land of 10,000 Aches.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's where it documents who wrote that. Oh, yeah, I wrote this book. This is my book.
You know, I've seen that book. It's in the car seat in the back of my car right now.
Yeah. So there's a lot of what we're talking about is in this book. It's available at Amazon. And hopefully only a limited time before this book becomes irrelevant, because once the Wolves win the championship, this book doesn't matter anymore. Because
are you gonna write a follow-up that says Land of One? What's a good word that rhymes with ache? I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, funny thing, Detroit Lakes had a big time capsule buried a couple summers ago, and my book is in that time capsule.
Oh, no kidding.
I really hope Minnesota wins a championship before this is dug up, and hopefully this is the year. But North Stars, I'm going to put the North Stars probably at. It's tough because Minnesota is notoriously loves their hockey. They love their North Stars. They lost in '81 to the Oilers, not the Oilers, to the Islanders. But looking at that '91 squad, I mean, expectations weren't very high for them coming into the season. They made the Stanley Cup championship and finished below 500.
Yeah,
and they just ran out of gas. I think the final score in Game 6 was like 8-0, the largest deficit of any series deciding game in NHL history. I mean, Minnesota loves their North Stars, but looking at the other teams on this list, I'd put the North Stars at number 8 as far as that one goes.
Yeah, it's weird because they're the only team on this list that actually made the round that could have won them the championship.
Yeah,
but they overachieved so much in that playoffs, like to even make the playoffs, really, and then overachieved in it that I think I agree with you. So putting them at number 8 probably makes sense. I'll be interested where this next team sits for you, and that is the 1998 Minnesota Vikings, who are, of course, 15-1. They were the third team, I think, ever to have 15 wins in a regular season. And we all know how that lost, losing to Atlanta in the NFC Championship game. This, in my lifetime, was the first time that I've felt the true taste of what a really great team was, and then that bitter loss, of course.
Yeah. A lot of what I'm feeling right now with this Wolves squad are the same feelings I was having in 1998 with that Vikings squad. And I mean, the expectation it was Super Bowl or bust. The expectation was this was the team that was going to win the first ever Super Bowl for the Vikings, and just one bad game is all it took. A couple bad play calls, a missed field goal late, taking a knee before the end of the half. When you have the most dynamic offense in the NFL up to that point, you've got Randy Moss and Chris Carter, Randall Cunningham having a huge breakout year that year, and taking over for Brad Johnson, who broke his arm in week 2, I think. And easily, when you talk Vikings football and the most heartbreaking loss, it has to be 98. This one has to be number 1 on this list because all the pieces were there. This was the year, and you can talk to any Vikings fan everywhere. How I Met Your Mother has the episode where I'm drinking until I forget the 1999 NFC Championship game. This has to be it.
I agree completely, and it's funny that just chronologically these two are the bookends of this entire list.
Yeah.
But as we go through these, there are some obvious. Even these are teams that made the semifinals, there are some obvious flaws, or like we're just happy to be here undertones to those teams. We were not just happy to be in the NFC Championship game as Vikings fans in 1998.
Right.
That was just the next step to what was going to be a Super Bowl victory. There was just no doubt about it. No doubt about it at all. And probably the saddest sports loss of my life.
Easily.
How about the 2002 Minnesota Twins? That Twins team had 94 wins, Zeke. They lost in the ALCS to that stupid rally monkey and the Anaheim Angels in 5.
Yeah. For me, I mean, Twins baseball was abysmal post 1993. I mean, you Kent Herbeck retires. You lose Kirby Puckett to the glaucoma. I mean, Chuck Knobloch demands a trade out, and it's a total rebuild. And maybe it happened a little bit earlier. I mean, in 2001, the final Tom Kelly year, you saw the pieces were in place there. You've got Gold Glove caliber center fielder and Torrey Hunter and pieces around him. You've got a pretty good pitching staff. Brad Radke took his lumps in the late 90s, and he was coming into his own in 2002. You've got Doug Mankiewicz, and you've got Jock Jones, and you've got a pre-Boston Red Sox, David Ortiz, Christian Guzman, Louis Rivas, and these scrappy Minnesota Twins, Corey Kosicki holding down the hot corner. And they surprised a lot of people. They were knocking on the door in 2001, 2002. They won the division, and they upset the Oakland Athletics, who I think had that season won like 21 or 22 consecutive games. They had an amazing pitching staff with Mulder and Barry Zito. And I forget the third.
Tim Hudson, I think.
Tim Hudson, that's who it was. Yeah, Tim Hudson. And so that going into a 5-game playoff series, that's who you want to have in those games. And they squeezed it out. They beat the Moneyball A's, and then that stupid rally monkey and the Thunder Sticks in Anaheim and Garrett Anderson and Mike Scioscia and just I think for that one too, it was a long time coming for Twins fans. Only 11 years removed or so from the 1991 championship series. And they had all these young pieces in place. I've got the 0-2 Minnesota Twins at number 3 on my list because again, Anaheim was the wild card in the playoffs, and Twins beat Oakland, who the top seed, I think. They get Anaheim and that stupid rally monkey, and you're like, okay, this is going to be an easy one. And
it wasn't. The stupid, Frankie Rodriguez coming out of the bullpen. But 90, I mean, that 94 wins that's a legitimate number. That team was really good. I think there was still at that time a little like screw you attitude from Minnesota Twins fans to Major League Baseball as a whole.
Oh yeah, for the whole contraction situation. Yeah,
we were still off of that, so there was a little like you were wrong, that there was some bitterness underneath all of it. And
absolutely,
you know, in those years the Yankees were so dynamic and you know, I think about like the Diamondbacks and the Marlins had some runs in those times too. That I don't know that the Twins were the best team in baseball at that time, but we definitely thought there was a chance for that team.
Yeah, the Giants were I think the Giants were the best team that year. That's who Anaheim beat in the World Series. But yeah, even back to 0-2, what makes this one even more bittersweet is 2002 was the season that saved Twins baseball, because they were gonna contract the Twins with the whole Metrodome situation. It was the Twins, it was the Expos. The Expos moved to Washington, and they were just going to eliminate the Twins, but they couldn't. You know, they had a lease with the Metrodome at that point, and so they couldn't. They were went to the Supreme Court or something like that, and it had Twins baseball not been that good in 2002 and got fans back into the game and been the first of, I think, 3 consecutive, AL Central division titles for the Twins. I mean, they'd be eliminated, or they'd be like the Durham, North Carolina Twins or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So that was the season that even though it saved Twins baseball, putting a World Series on top of that year would have been the cherry on top of the Bud Selig trying to get rid of the Twins situation.
Let's move on to the 2003 Timberwolves. That Timberwolves team, 20 years ago, advanced to the Western Conference Finals. They had 58 wins during the regular season, Zeke. They end up losing to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals in 6. Now, this was a team, what I very distinctly remember from that Timberwolves season was thinking, a Timberwolves homer that I am, that they were better than the Lakers. It was on the backside of the really heavy, extreme Shaq, Kobe, Laker. Mm-hmm. It was now on the backwards kind of slide of that, the very beginning of that slide, but the backslide nonetheless. And the Timberwolves were better than the Lakers if they would have had any point guard in the Western Conference Finals. Sam Cassell got hurt, and Troy Hudson, their backup point guard, was also hurt. And I just think if KG didn't have to play point guard in that series, it's a totally different series, and it still went 6.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what makes me optimistic about this series with Dallas. As you look back to 2003, which was kind of all the cumulation of the Wolves losing in the first round every single year through the Marbury years. I think it began in like 96, all the way up 8 straight first round exits for 8 straight consecutive first round exits for Flip Saunders teams.
Yeah.
You beat Carmelo Anthony and the upstart Denver Nuggets, the 8 seed. You survive Chris Webber's desperation 3 at the buzzer in Game 7 against Sacramento Kings. And then you get Shaq and Kobe and the Los Angeles Lakers, who I think had won 3 titles together at that point. Plus you add a ring-chasing Karl Malone at that point was on that team. The glove Gary Payton was on that team, kind of the first super team, if you will, of aging superstars and Hall of Famers getting together to try for a title. And just another footnote in the Kobe Bryant legacy, getting the Lakers past the Wolves in 6 games. And like you said, if Kevin Garnett, that was the big thing with this time with the Wolves, if he had any kind of help ever in his career outside of Steph Marbury, and they lit it up together for a while, and then having the big 3 in Minnesota in 03, 04, then the way that blew up with trading Cassell, and Sprewell couldn't trade his family, and just eventually resulted in Kevin Garnett being traded to Boston for a haul, if you will, of draft picks, Al Jefferson in that trade, and then he won the championship within the next 2 years in Boston.
You're right.
But the way that Wolves fans love Kevin Garnett and have always rallied around Kevin Garnett, and that was the season that we were going to get it done, and just ran into a team that featured 4 Hall of Famers on it.
Right.
And they almost came away with a win in that one.
This one, one of the similarities that this current Timberwolves team has to that Timberwolves team is that they had like a steady ship in a point guard, in a veteran Sam Cassell in 03-04, and obviously Mike Conley, who just seemed the team seemed to there was a gelling effect that those guys brought to the floor, and then to sort of lose Cassell in those moments in that series was tough. That was a really tough out. So where would you put that Wolves team on this list?
I've got that Wolves team at number. I'm waffling between 4 and 5 here.
It's hard because I think they were really good, but those injuries in place made it seem fairly inevitable it wasn't going to work out in their favor.
Yeah, I'll put them at number 5.
I like that.
I've got 03-04 Wolves at number 5 on my list here.
So it turns out it was that 03 year was pretty fun because the Wild were tough that year. 42 wins. They get swept by Anaheim in 4 in the conference finals. Where do you think, and what do you think about that 03 Wild team?
I think that 03 Wild team, I think they're the only division winner in Wild history. Every other time they've made the playoffs, they've been a wild card, and they were only 3 or 4 years old at that point, and way ahead of the curve on where they should have been. Marian Gaborik had a fantastic breakout year. There was the Andrew Brunette overtime winner against Colorado to kind of launch that playoff trajectory and get those fans' hopes up. They take care of business against the Vancouver Ducks to get to that series against Anaheim. And just the thing in hockey is one hot goaltender is all it takes sometimes to get your team to a championship. And Jean-Sebastien Giguère was that guy for Anaheim in that series, and just completely dominated the Wild, shut them down to get Anaheim again, to the Stanley Cup Finals, which I think they won that year.
I was putting this list together, and the number of times I had to write Anaheim down, which was only twice, was enough to make me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
So a good division winner in the Minnesota Wild that year. Do they rank higher than your 03 Wolves then on this list?
They don't. I have the 2003 Minnesota Wild at number 6.
Nice.
Yeah, which again, as a hockey fan, hurts to have the Wild and the North Stars the bottom 2 here, but I think that's where they belong based on everything else. If the Vikings wouldn't have broke our hearts so many dang times between 91 and now, I'd put the hockey teams higher.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but the next one on the list is the 2009. I got the 08-09 Minnesota Vikings, 12-4. They end up losing to the Saints in that stupid Bounty Gate game. On my Mount Rushmore of sports hate is Sean Payton because of this game. This was another team comparing to the 98 Vikings. They just had everything. You remember in that season, they beat San Francisco kind of on that Hail Marys of sorts, whatever you want to call it, to the back of the end zone. The second that was caught and called a touchdown, it just felt like this season was going to be inevitable. And obviously it didn't. It was special until it burst into a flame like the Hindenburg.
Yeah, there's a number of good and bad moments in that one. I mean, you look at the Greg Lewis, Brett Favre touchdown, and then I think it was week 15 or 16, a game against the lowly Chicago Bears. Adrian Peterson fumbles away a victory that would have given the Vikings a number 1 seed. New Orleans had the 1 seed that year. So that game could have been at the Metrodome versus the Superdome and all the stuff that the little minute points that you can go back and look at during a season and how that affects the outcome of a season. And again, you go back to 98. I mean, Vikings fans had the same feeling in 2009 as they did in 1998. They needed a quarterback. They had years of just not having the guy. Brett Favre comes in. Are you kidding me? Brett Favre as a Minnesota Viking. You have Adrian Peterson, who was the most dominant running back at the time. Great offensive line with Hall of Famer Steve Hutchinson. You've got Sidney Rice. You've got Percy Harvin. All the offensive tools are there. Defensively, Antoine Winfield is there. You've got a great linebacking core. Defensive line was absolutely solid. You had Ryan Longwell as your kicker, another Green Bay guy who came in and hit some huge kicks for the Vikings. And then just the Vikings can't get out of their own way in 2009. I remember the 3 most devastating losses in my lifetime. It's kind of where were you moments. 1995 high school boys championship game, Staples Motley Cardinals versus Minneapolis North Polars, and easily the best high school championship game ever. Class A versus Class 2A. They had to play each other. I was at my grandparents' house on their couch watching the game on TV. Dick Bramer was on the call that night, and just tears when they hit that Polars hit the putback. They win by 1 or 2 points. 1998 on my grandparents' couch watching the game on TV. Stop watching all sports at my grandpa's house. And then 2009, I finished the game face down in the fetal position as Garrett Hartley kicked that overtime game winner to keep the ball out of Brett Favre's hands and send the New Orleans Saints and Sean Payton and all those cheaters to that Super Bowl. I'll say it. I'll say it. All those cheaters to the Super Bowl, and that just again across the body interceptions, untimely fumbles by Adrian Peterson, the phantom pass interference call on Ben Lieber that I'm still very bitter about because it just didn't happen. You want to talk about some bad Jamal Murray flops in the Wolves series? Go back and watch that PI call up against Ben Lieber, and it's more egregious than anything that Jamal Murray tried to pull out instead of throwing that heat back in the towel in game 2. But my heart rate is climbing as I'm talking about this game. And reliving it. In my book, this was the very last chapter I wrote because it was the chapter I didn't want to put in this book, just to relive all that. And just I've got the 09 Vikings at number 2 on this.
It's got to be. I agree totally for all of the reasons you just said, and I don't want to talk about it anymore because it makes me sad.
Why do you do this to me, man?
Well, I'm going to talk about the Vikings a little more because the next team on the list is the 2017 Vikings. Now, here's why it is maybe a little better and why they don't rank as high is because Case Keenum was the quarterback. Minneapolis Miracle, all of these things going their way. It just, as a Vikings fan, that was a fun, just roller coaster of a season to be on because it never felt like it was supposed to be that good, and they were so good the entire time.
Yeah. For me, if the Minneapolis Miracle doesn't happen the way that it does against the team that it happened to in the New Orleans Saints, with the Super Bowl at home, again, it was just another very, very high expectations. It felt like that 2017 Vikings team was a team of destiny.
It did.
They've never won a Super Bowl. They have a chance to be the first ever team to win a Super Bowl at home, right?
Yep.
They beat Sean Payton, who was taunting the Vikings fans as the Saints took the lead late with the Skol chant. I mean, Keenum, Diggs, sideline, touchdown, and it just felt at that moment that this was going to be the team.
Yep.
That broke the curse. They head to Philadelphia.
Right down the field and score.
They take a 7-0 lead. And it's like, okay, here we go. Kyle Rudolph gets us on the board. There's no way. Expectations were so high. Eagles roll off 38 consecutive points, and they beat the Vikings 38-7, and then come into our house and win the Super Bowl at US Bank Stadium.
In hindsight, it's really easy to look back on that and talk about how what's the Thanos line? Inevitable.
I am inevitable.
That Philadelphia team was inevitable. I think they had close to 1,200 yards of offense in the NFC Championship game and Super Bowl. There was nothing anybody was doing to stop them. The only thing you could do was try to outscore them. And it felt like for the briefest of moments when the Vikings went up 7-0 and went right down the field and scored, like they could do it. Mm-hmm. And boy, oh boy, did they not do it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a picture on my phone of me during that game. My wife hadn't heard from me in a while. And so she came downstairs to see what I was doing. And I'm trying to find the picture so I can show you. It's sad, isn't it? It's peak Minnesota sports fan. And I want to find this picture so bad. I've got the 2017 Minnesota Vikings at number 5 on my list, by the way.
I'll put them at number 4 ahead of the 03 Wolves. How does that sound?
Yeah, those are the two I was waffling between. Was do I put the Wolves or I think, yeah, if the Minneapolis Miracle doesn't happen and expectations get so high as the team of destiny,
yes,
I'd put lower on this list, but it just felt like redemption was going to happen.
Well, they were really well-constructed team. As a matter of fact, in the ensuing years for a while, it felt like, because Kirk Cousins was right on the heels of that. But one of the things that team brought together is the offensive line run blocked well. Mm-hmm. They struggled pass blocking. So to have a guy like Keenum, who's kind of a career journeyman, but was able to keep plays alive and keep hope alive on a down by down basis, it was a really fine fit as far as a roster goes. It was really fun. Keenum threw a ball a half at least that other teams just didn't catch all season long. I remember that being a very strong undertone to the entire season, where it's like Keenum's thrown 4 interceptions this game, and 3 of them have been dropped. Thank goodness. But you're right. Some of that inevitability, you tack that onto the Super Bowl being in town that same year. Then you had the Minneapolis Miracle, the perfect call that goes with it. They marched down the field in the championship game. It's whatever. It was just sad. the underlying tone for all of this, Zeke, I'm finding is that all of these just made me sad.
Yeah, we got the biggest game in Wolves history last night, biggest win ever, and we're talking about talking about this.
So
but, yeah.
As you continue to look for that, I do want to talk about the 2024 Minnesota Timberwolves, because they now are officially on this list of teams who have made it to the semifinal round. And if we've ranked all of these teams like best teams, the team that had the best chance to win the championship but didn't, or in this Timberwolves case, hadn't, where do you think this Timberwolves team falls onto this list?
Number 3 for me, easy. It's you put them behind the 98 Vikings and you put them behind the 09 Vikings, because coming into this season, you knew that this team was going to be good. There was some disappointment last year. You lose in the first round to Denver, culminated kind of by Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson going at it in the huddle. There was still the overhanging dread of all the draft picks, all the players you gave away for Rudy Gobert, and it really wasn't working. You didn't have Ant and Cat and Gobert on the court all healthy very often, because Cat got hurt and missed time last year too, and they didn't really have that time to gel. And so expectations coming into this season were kind of questionable. You assumed the Wolves were going to be a top 8 team in the West. If they're not a top 8, not a top 6 team, you want to avoid the play-in game. That was the expectations I had for this Wolves team, is you have to be a top 6 team in the West this year. And a lot of competition in the West. You got the defending champs. You got LeBron and Lakers, who always like to make some noise, the in-season tournament champions. You got the big 3 out in Phoenix with Beal and Durant and Booker, and who's going to guard all 3 of those guys? And of course, you've got Steph Curry is still around, and still a lot of pieces. You've got the Dallas Mavericks. You've got a new 3-headed monster in Los Angeles with the Clippers, and Westbrook and Harden and Kawhi Leonard now. And where do the Wolves fall in all that? And of course, Oklahoma City comes out of nowhere, a 14 seed 2 years ago, and they get the number 1 seed this year. And for the Wolves to be the final team standing out of the big 3 in the West, out of Denver, OKC, and them, of course, and to go through one of those teams to get to where they are, I think has heightened expectations quite a bit. I think the way that the national media has latched onto Anthony Edwards after basically discovering him in that Phoenix series, why he wasn't a candidate for MVP, I'll never know. Probably because the media, they're looking at Jokic, they're looking at Shea, who brought the Thunder out of nowhere, and of course you've got Luka, who's a really good player too. Yeah, and I think just the increased press coverage, even though Dan Patrick spent an exorbitant amount of time talking about the New York Knicks losing Game 7 to the Pacers this morning. I think expectations for this Wolves team, which now we know this is the best Wolves team of all time, shoots them up the list to at least number 3. They're not the 98 Vikings and the expectations there. They're not the 09 Vikings. Maybe if the Wolves had brought in LeBron James or something like that, you could put them up higher. But they didn't bring in that Brett Favre. They brought in
re-signed Nas.
They re-signed Nas, and that was the big thing. Yeah. So I'd put these Vikings or these Wolves at number 3 on the list.
So one of the things that has come out of this season is, I'm like you, I did not have high expectations for this team coming into the season. Now, I had some friends, I will give them all the credit in the world. They really, really did. But we knew coming into the year that the West was loaded for all of those things you talked about. And included in that is that OKC also got really good during the year. I think they were kind of the darling a year ago, and everybody expected them to be better.
Yep.
Did anybody expect that adding Chet and just another year of Shea would make them
the number
the 1 seed in the West? And we know it was close, right? It was a game between the top 3 seeds, and some tiebreakers meant that the Timberwolves got 3rd. But one of the things that became obvious as the season went along for the Wolves is they were really fun and also legitimately good. It was just apparent from very early on that as long as this team could keep hitting some benchmarks along the way that maybe we didn't even know exist, right? Like last night was an obvious milestone. Win on the road in Game 7 against the defending champs and the MVP. That's an obvious milestone.
In a game you're down by 20,
Yeah, but there's some other things, like you took out Phoenix in Game 1. How do you bounce back as a team who's not really been here before in Game 2? Well, they beat the pants off of Phoenix in that game.
How much you want us to lose? How much you want us to lose? We've been losing for 20 years.
Such a good answer. But they've hit these checkpoints along the way. Ant is like he is growing by leaps and bounds, not just in a stepwise fashion. It became very obvious very early that this team was legitimately good, and they were absolute contenders. CJ and I have talked about them all year. Between the two of us, with you, with Jared in the building. What's also been fun about this Wolves team is that none of us have ever said they will win a championship. but they can. This team
absolutely
really absolutely can. Where if you think about the Vikings team from a couple years ago that had such a good season and lost to the Giants in the first round, did anybody think that team was going to do anything? No. The record was good, but it felt flawed, and it was fun. I'm not like it was fun. All that stuff really happened. The loss to the Giants was still disappointing, but that would have been a giant horseshoe up the rear end if they would have gone on to win anything of consequence.
Mm-hmm.
This Wolves team does not feel that way. This feels expected is too strong of a word, but it has fallen within the realm of kind of probability for them, which there's two Timberwolves teams in my life that have been that way.
Yeah, and I think expectations for me is you want it to be a top 6 team in the West, and you wanted to win a playoff series, because that's been the big knock on Karl-Anthony Towns for the last 9 years is you haven't won a playoff series. You lost to Memphis a couple of years ago. You lost to Denver last year. Show me what you've done recently. And now he's right. The big meme is a Karl-Anthony Towns conference championship appearances 1, Joel Embiid 0. It feels so good to be able to say that. And this is the team that can do it, because you talk about the lack of experience. Well, you've got Mike Conley, who's been here before. Rudy Gobert has been here before, and now Anthony Edwards he's just soaking up the limelight, and Karl-Anthony Towns the same way. And there are some things I would change about the way that the Wolves handled themselves in the Game 7, the McDaniels dunk at the end. I mean,
yeah.
Or the attempted dunk. I mean, maybe went a little too far, but if you blow a 20-point lead on your home floor in Game 7, you deserve to be dunked on like that. And you deserve to be waving to the crowd. And I think I look at the Memphis team from last year and just the lightning rod that they were media-wise, and how much people disliked last year's Memphis Grizzlies. I just don't want the media to flip this and turn that on the Wolves, because with Boston looming potentially in the NBA Finals, who's going to be getting all of the media attention. It's going to be the big market, because I think I'm not sure what the Dallas market size is, but we have to be the second largest market left, right?
Well, definitely bigger than Indiana for sure.
Yeah.
I would imagine the Dallas Fort Worth. I would imagine that's bigger, but I mean, it does. I'm willing to get a chip on my shoulder about all the Luka talk because of how good he is, and
he deserves it. Yeah,
and the Kyrie resurgence this year, all that stuff is. But I'm not willing to be bitter about that until tomorrow. So very quickly, Zeke, our list is of the teams that almost got it done. This is our ranking of the best of those teams: the 98 Vikings, the 09 Vikings, the 24 Wolves, the 02 Twins, the 17 Vikings, the 03 Wolves, the 03 Wild, and the 91 North Stars. Do you have, very quickly, an honorable mention or two that deserves some respect?
Yeah, I think if the 2006 Twins could have put it together, I think they could have made a run. I mean, AL Central champions, you've got the MVP in Justin Morneau, the Cy Young winner in Johan Santana, the batting champ in Joe Mauer. Torrey Hunter wins a couple Gold Gloves, and it's just, if Liriano doesn't get hurt that year, we get swept by Oakland kind of at the beginning of that long 17, 18, 19 game postseason losing streak or whatever. I mean, that was, I mean, I put the 2006 Twins above the 02 Twins talent-wise on my list, but
definitely
they got swept in the first round by that scrappy Oakland team, and just definitely the 06 Twins as honorable mention. I did find that picture, by the way. I'm not sure how good it'll look on the webcam here.
Yeah,
but this is.
Oh no, you're very sad.
I am very sad. Yeah, I fetal position in front of my 3 deep Randy Moss, Chris Carter, Jake Reed poster.
Love that poster. I had it too.
Yep, in my underwear, fetal position, listening to the radio. Yeah, hadn't heard from him in a while. Went downstairs, found him like this, is what the caption says. January 21st, 2018.
There's no better way to be in the fetal position, by the way, than in your underwear.
Right. I don't think I can do that anymore. I'm not that flexible anymore.
One of the reasons to do this exercise, by the way, is also a way to say winning a championship is super duper freaking hard.
Absolutely.
And there's a million reasons. There's a team can cheat. Your team can be injured. You could just have a few unlucky things go your way. And all of a sudden, your dreams are utterly and completely dashed in the saddest, most miserable way possible. It's almost as if there's been 10,000 of them in our fan career. But it's also what makes it's kind of what being a fan is all about. You got it to go through it, and then to have a year like this is totally and completely rejuvenating. I love it so much.
I know it feels good to feel what I'm feeling, knowing potentially what comes next, but just having that sense of hope. We talked about this before, our feelings about Devin Booker from the first series and our feelings on Jamal Murray in the second series. It feels so good to be able to have villains against the Wolves in the NBA, because for so long it's just been irrelevant and you just let anybody beat up on the Wolves. But now that you care, I don't want to hate Luka Doncic. I like Luka Doncic, but I'm scared that he's going to become that next guy in this series. And I shouldn't feel that way. I should want to crush Luka Doncic because he's standing between the Wolves and an NBA championship. It's the Minnesota nice in me. I want to sweep Dallas. I want to see Dallas fans cry.
Just sad.
I know. Well, it's not sad. They stole the North Stars from us. Now the Dallas Stars are in the Western Conference Championship for hockey. They're going to take on either Edmonton or Vancouver, depending on how that Game 7 goes tonight. So,
right.
Yeah, I shouldn't feel bad for Dallas fans because they're so fun to tease.
Yep.
But I want to see that whole state cry, man. I just want doom and gloom for anybody who likes the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, everything's bigger in Texas, including hopefully their tears.
Including heartbreak, yes.
All right, Zeke, thanks so much. This was fun. The Morning Sports Desk for May 20th.